Hello and welcome to this webinar from Curo Compensation. My name is Ruth Thomas and I'm the Industry Principal and Co-founder here at Curo, and I'll be taking you through this webinar today. As some of you will be aware, if you've joined our webinars before, we run regular webinars that cover both best practice and also some sessions that focus on how our compensation management technology solutions can support you in the reward challenges that you face today. But today's session is really all about best practice, and the topic for today is around reward governance. So here's our agenda for today. I'm going to start with some brief housekeeping and introductions before moving on to the topic. It's less of a technical session around reward governance. I'm going to be looking at the evolution of reward governance, and the message that I'm going to be trying to get across today is around why, as reward professionals, we need to think about a broader application of reward governance rather than potentially that's defined under some of the corporate governance areas that we traditionally look at. And part of that's going to be looking at how we can measure the effectiveness of our reward strategy and how technology can support you with that. The session runs for 30 minutes, so you're currently all on mute. And if you wish to ask a question during the session, you can type that into the chat box. I normally leave all the questions until the end, and I will open the floor to questions, and I'll remind you again how to ask questions, but you can do that through the chat box in the Join Me panel, which hopefully you can see either on the top or side of your screen. The session is being recorded, so we will be posting that. We normally post that out through our website in the next day or two. And if you wish to have a copy of the presentation at all, then we're happy to share a PDF of that, and that will be going out after the session as well. So I'm just going to start with a quick introduction to Curo for those of you who don't know who we are. So we're total compensation management specialists, and we focus on HR technology to help companies with their reward challenges. And we have 3 products now within the market: our Curo Enterprise product, which we have over 80 clients working on, who use our solution to manage complex compensation processes within their organizations. We released earlier this year our Curo Lite product, which is a more affordable, configurable compensation solution geared to smaller and medium-sized businesses. And also we have had in the market now for over 5 months our gender pay gap product, which is focused on companies in the UK who need to comply with the UK gender pay gap reporting legislation. We have a growing list of partners with whom we work either to help distribute our products or to manage implementation for us. And we have quite a big footprint in the market now with over 80 clients across 140 companies and supporting over 220,000 employees. We're proud of the quality of our client base, and here's just a few examples of the types of company we work with. And that's really it from the advert for Curo Compensation. If you want to find out any more about us, then please do go onto our website, curocomp.com, and you can find information about case studies about our clients there, or do get in touch if there's more information that you'd like to know, and particularly if you're in any of the sectors that we have a strong foothold in. Okay, so on to today's topic, which is reward governance. So over the last 10 years, we've seen really a succession of developments in regulation and governance around remuneration, and many employers have been having to review their existing pay arrangements to make sure they fit in with this new regulatory landscape. But the emergence of governance and the evolution of that reward governance really came to light immediately post the financial crisis, where there was a direct focus on the role reward structures were perceived to have played in causing excessive risk-taking that led to the financial crash. Since then, I know many of you who've been working in the FS sector know that there's been this raft of regulation that has been and continues to be deployed, and so much so that we've seen the new discipline of reward governance manager emerge, particularly in global firms operating under multiple regulatory jurisdictions. But reward governance has now extended well beyond the FS sector, with the emphasis to date being on the management of executive pay and ensuring executive pay is aligned with long-term business strategy and shareholder interest and risk. And this has really been the focus of UK remuneration committees and US compensation committees over the last 8 years or so. In the UK, recent amendments to the Corporate Governance Code, which took effect in June 2016, hinted at a need to focus on the wider scene, and that remuneration committees should be sensitive to wider pay and employment conditions beyond just executive pay, particularly when considering issues such as executive pay gaps. And you are now starting to see, if you look at any of the UK annual reports and the reports from remuneration committees, they are now dedicating a portion of their report to consideration of what is happening below the executive levels. More recent developments around regulation or legislation for reward has been focused very much on pay transparency, with the need, with new and proposed legislation covering areas such as pay equity. So here in the UK with the gender pay gap legislation, and in the US the emerging equal pay legislation. And we now have on the table potential executive pay gap reporting ratios as well. But I think it's time for us to think about applying the principles of governance rigorously across all our compensation policies, and not just at the senior levels within organisations. And I think there are some key drivers around why we need to broaden this focus. Firstly, our CEOs, I think it's fair to say, now understand, as a result of what's happened in the last 8 to 9 years, the impact reward can have on an organisation's effectiveness and reputational risk, and the need to manage this strategically and align with shareholder interest. Plus, we have this drive for productivity in today's challenging economic environment that's leading us to focus more and more on optimizing the investment in human capital in organizations. And this was highlighted in the most recent reward survey from the UK CIPD in December 2017. They talk about the productivity puzzle, has been very much focused in the news. Oops, sorry, I just changed presenter there. Sorry, bear with me. Right, sorry, I was just talking about the CIPD reward management survey there. And what was shown in that survey is that many employers are responding to the concern about labour productivity by looking at using reward to boost output or reduce production costs. And then we have this issue of an employee engagement. The one thing that a lot of the legislation around pay transparency is doing is also driving awareness amongst our employees. And they're also demanding more information about how reward is being allocated within our organisations. And we know that if you want to focus on engaging employees when it comes to reward, the focus has to be on whether their pay has been fairly determined, because that's one of the most critical engagement factors when it comes to reward. So, big question, aren't we already all doing that now? And I think if you pick up any annual report, you will see that organisations can easily articulate their reward strategy and principles and how they use reward practices to drive and support business strategy. And many of those annual reports have this boilerplate reward strategy that reward is all about attracting, retaining, and motivating their key employees and their key talent. I think what we're not so good at in reward is measuring and demonstrating the effectiveness of our delivery of reward principles. And that's probably something that we can focus on in terms of improving governance. Some of the sort of evidence that we might see from this, generally within all markets, we see this weak pay differentiation. Now, some will debate that the limited pay budgets and the constrained wage growth that we have currently is making differentiation hard. But if you're adopting the so-called peanut butter approach to pay awards, then you are not focusing critical budgets on key talent, which may be contrary to your articulated reward strategy. So, that's one obvious place to have a look. What are we saying in our reward strategy about how we're allocating pay? And we talk to many organisations about their reward strategy and know that they struggle to demonstrate a clear ROI on reward. with reward often being seen more as a cost of doing business rather than an investment that can be optimized. And you might think in reward functions more than any other area of HR that we should be able to come up with those nice hard numbers to demonstrate to even the most interpersonally challenged CEO or CFD that our reward practices really are making a positive difference. But I wonder how many of us can honestly say we can provide evidence-based answers to some of these key questions that I'm showing here. So I think one place to start is definitely this shift of focus of how we view reward. And I'm going to refer to a study by Scottie McMullen here, and I'm referencing on the slide there, who looked at how well organisations were assessing reward effectiveness. And they explained this shift of view or shift of focus as a change from looking at pay as a cost, which must be minimised with the focus on budget management, which I know a lot of us spend our time doing, to one where pay and reward is seen as an investment that must be optimised to ensure maximum productivity and leverage of human capital. And this really is a much more compelling approach when set against today's economic challenges. And they also suggested in that study that there's this disconnect between where reward professionals spend their time and what CEOs want them to do. So the area from this that we need to improve on is demonstrating to executives and shareholders and employees how we are monitoring the effectiveness of reward. And there is a whole body of research that's also been dedicated to this issue, and I'm going to refer to some more of those, and I've included the links to all of those at the end of my deck. One of these studies goes back in time a bit to 2009, but it's a study by Brown and Riley from the Institute of Employment Studies in the UK. As the title suggests, they reviewed how effective organisations were at measuring the impact of their reward strategy. And they took evidence from the UK CIPD annual reward management surveys from 2004 to 2009. And as I said, I know that's looking back quite a way in time, but I still think a lot of their messages ring true today. And what they saw, you can see some of the facts here on screen, that only a minority of organisations were attempting to assess systematically the effectiveness of their reward practices. So you can see some of the figures that they unearthed, that 46% of respondents were unaware of their total spend on rewards. Now, I think the advances of technology over the last few years has definitely had an improvement on that. It wasn't uncommon when we started working with organisations 8 or so years ago for them, not to know how many people they had in their organisation globally, for example. Let alone how much money they were spending. And I think now people are moving on to more global, cost-effective cloud HR solution platforms. That is becoming more achievable. But less than a quarter of organisations used any business data in making their assessments, and fewer than a fifth of organisations did any sort of financial cost-benefit analysis when they introduced changes to their reward programs. So, all these facts are really interesting. It'd be interesting to see, for you to ask yourself whether you are doing any of these. And the two studies that I've mentioned so far, and across, the various studies that I've referenced, these tend to be the typical barriers to why we say we're not doing this. Why are we not spending our time trying to link a direct ROI to our business strategy from the money we spend on reward? The obvious one is obviously time and resources, that we're too busy a lot of the time running the process, corralling data to actually be able to lift our head above the parapet and look at the impact of what we're doing with reward. We've often been hampered with poor data management. I mean, that's a bit of a legacy we have in HR, but as I said, that is starting to be remedied. Lack of senior management understanding has been put forward. I think it's more about, us really empowering managers with that information, and that's something that we need to do better. And interestingly, this lack of expertise or methodology within the HR function. And I think we are coming to a point where we're seeing rapid technology deployment, the application of business intelligence and analytics, that we do start to think about some of the new skills that we might need in HR to help us to drive through effective metrics, for example. So there was another study, again, looking at assessing reward effectiveness. This is one I mentioned by McMullen, Kale and Scott for Hay Group back in 2014. And these were the recommendations they gave in terms of what we need to do. So the obvious ones are around demonstrating how your reward programs support your business strategy, but providing evidence that links reward effectiveness to business performance. But once you've done that, you need to build in ongoing assessment into reward program design and implementation. So it's not just a one-year thing. You need to do it continuously to be able to monitor the effectiveness. And from a sort of traditional HR gut feel approach that we often deploy when it comes to making decisions, we need to start moving towards more evidence-based decisions. And I think it's really important to involve managers and employees in this process, because they are really key stakeholders in the reward engagement process. So one of the critical takeaways that I think is really going about establishing metrics. So trying to find the key performance indicators that are relevant to your organization that are going to help you establish the effectiveness of your reward strategy principles. So, metrics rather than gut feel. And that's, that is quite hard to do. How do you show that the amount of money that you're spending on reward is actually driving productivity? How do you show that it is driving an employee engagement? But there are ways that you can think about breaking that down. I'm going to give you an example here from that Brown and Riley study, which was a case study that they provided for a major accounting firm. So this table identifies on the left the company's key reward principles, and on the right the measures or KPIs that they use to evidence this. And I think just breaking it down reward principle by reward principle is a really great way of trying to do this. And so you can see, they were looking at trying to drive through performance-driven reward in this organization. And so they looked at some of the things that they were looking at. Some of them are metrics, some of them are the analytics that you're probably already doing today. But also, they were looking at external market data, but also looking at input from employees and managers as well through engagement surveys or through specific surveys on how reward was being received in the organization. So it's a combination of different metrics and approaches to gathering data. And the Hay study also, gives a similar version of this. They provide a model that's quite holistic and balanced in terms of developing metrics and KPIs to demonstrate reward effectiveness. And again, you can see there's this broad range of measures with a mix of benchmarking data together with feedback from managers and employees. And all of those, you can pull together to match to your key reward principles. Okay, so to recap there on how we might go about broadening reward governance to our general reward application. So the starting point is obviously linking reward to business strategy. So we need to understand, first of all, what success looks like now and in the future for our businesses. Then we need to understand how our employees can help deliver this success and where they can create value. And then we need to ensure that our reward principles are designed to support this. Then you can start to get to the point of measuring the effectiveness and moving from that gut feel approach to a more evidence-based approach that uses multiple sources of data and evidence. And then obviously, as I said earlier, monitoring that over time and adapting as necessary. So I'd like to then briefly talk about how technology can help you do this. Well, we'll go back to that point where we said, what are the typical barriers? Well, time and resources is often put forward as, we're too busy doing and not enough time being able to focus on high value tasks or outcomes. And that's really, one of the key arguments around deploying technology. They're sort of the traditional operational benefits that you can achieve by automating and streamlining processes and saving time. And it is very much about that, automating those low-value tasks so that you can move away to focus on high-value tasks and outcomes. But today, there is a lot of debate, as you're probably all aware, around, managing data and managing different types of data in order to improve the way that we manage reward and link that to business performance. And that's really where technology can help you also in terms of manipulating that data. It can bring together all that employee data that you need to really make, strong evidence-based decisions. And, it can help you to track multiple employee measures to establish whether reward program design and implementation is being successful. And another key element that we often don't think about as a benefit from technology is around empowering and guiding stakeholders in this process so that they have the information available to make powerful and informed decisions real time. Ultimately, the managers making decisions about employees' reward they're at the coalface. They understand what's going on, and they need to have the tools to be able to make effective decisions as they would with regard to any other business expense within the organisation. So many leading platforms are integrating new BI and analytical tools in order to support and enhance this process, and that's something we've done at Curo too. So we integrated a leading BI platform into our product, and we call that ITCM, Intelligent Total Compensation Management. And what we now deliver to our clients through our platform are powerful analytics that they can use real time during the review in order to support key decisions by executives, managers, and reward and HR users who are typically managing the process. So we provide them information around trends around diversity. We provide them information around benchmarking and general award analysis in terms of looking at how you're allocating your salary or bonus awards. But as well as just managing information, technology can also help more broadly when it comes to supporting reward governance. One of the most powerful things you can do with an effective compensation tool is impact decision makers real time in order to help pay decisions become less subjective and more objective. I know from my own experience of working for many years as a compensation manager, the most painful time was often the moderation phase once the review is over and you've had all your recommendations in for managers. And it's that time you're really trying to look at where the problems were, look at where managers had overspent, look at where you had worrying trends of allocation. And really, it's too late by then because you are running up to your payroll deadline. So what using technology does, it allows you to present that information and those key trends to the decision makers while they're actually making the decisions. And the idea is that you're trying to influence their behaviour before they submit their decisions for approval, and hopefully making your job easier in the moderation phase. There are some specific tactics within technology platforms that you can use. We have system alerts that ensure compliance to reward principles, particularly around issues such as fairness. So when managers are making pay recommendations, they will be prompted at different threshold levels. And we have been more recently in the last 12 months using that around equal pay issues. You can also use technology to really help a broader definition in terms of distributing pay relative to key talent. So moving from this sort of one-dimensional performance rating is your one measurement of talent, and that's what you're using to distribute pay. We have a number of clients working through our platform where they're using multiple key talent metrics in order to calibrate merit matrices for distributing pay more effectively. Obviously, another key area of governance, if we're talking specifically about governance, has been over approvals and who's approving whose compensation. And that's obviously easy to control within a workflow hierarchy type approach through a technology solution. There's always a clear audit trail in terms of who has approved whose decision and who made the changes where. You have a lot more control over budget spend. Typically our clients will report that they have a 5 to 10 budget spend overage before they move to using our platform. What our platform will allow you to do is to set budget thresholds at different levels of the hierarchy and help to control that budget spend. And obviously, there are a number of thresholds that you can get managers to comply with through the compensation platform, around pay ranges and market positioning. So, there's a lot of stuff you can do around reward governance through a good, effective compensation management platform. Okay, so those are the list of references. So if we circulated that deck afterwards, you'll be able to get hold of that. They're the number of the studies that I've referred to through this session, looking at assessing reward effectiveness. And I will just open the floor to questions now. So as I said earlier, if you wish to ask a question, you can submit that through the chat box at the top probably of your screen where the Join Me panel is sitting. My panel is sitting on the side of my screen today for some reason. If you don't want to do that, then you can get in touch through any of the means here. So either get back in touch with your normal Curo contact. You can come through to us at info@curocomp.com. Or if you go onto our website, you can find all the contact pages there, and we're happy to answer any questions that you may have, particularly on this topic. They normally get forwarded to me as I've delivered the content today, and I do get back to everybody with any questions that they have. And for those of you who join later in the call, just to let you know that we have recorded this session. So you will be able to get access to that, as well as a copy of the deck, and our sales representatives will be in touch with you after this event regarding that. So any questions coming through? Okay, yeah, I can just see one question that's come through, which is asking me around, is there a common set of principles that all organisations, sorry, a common set of measures that all organisations should apply? And I think the answer is no. It's very much going to be different depending on the culture and the business strategy of your organisation. But when it comes to reward, there are definitely some common principles you should be focusing on, and some common measures, particularly around who is getting awarded what, particularly if you're in an organisation that's got highly discretionary allocation, then that is something that you want to be measuring. Who are the people that's actually going to? But there will be lots of different measures that will apply to different organisations, and you will need to change those measures over time as well. Okay, and another question coming through saying, is there any corporate governance demanding us to do this? No, as I said, not at this stage, or not that I'm aware of. As I did mention, at the beginning, it was hinted at during the latest revision to corporate governance in the UK, but this is really more best practice, I would say, rather than anything specifically demanded through any legislation at this stage. Okay. All right, I can't see any more questions coming in, so I'm going to leave it there. Thank you all very much for joining today. I hope you've enjoyed the webinar, and we look forward to seeing you on an event in the future. All our events are posted on our event page at curocomp.com, so go in there and you can sign up easily and register for any of those events, and we look forward to seeing you again in the future. Thank you.